I'm going to show you now how to make a very famous sweet called Gulab jamuns, rose-scented balls in syrup. They're actually quite amazing, and the most amazing thing about them is what they're made of, simply milk, sugar and water. But you wouldn't tell by looking at them. Now, they're a bit of a challenge to make, but if you can master these, then people will flock in droves to eat your Gulab jamuns because they're actually the most amazing sweets. Now, the ingredients are quite simple, but the way to make them is actually the real essence. Now, the syrup should be made in advance. This is 4 cups of sugar and 4 cups of water that have been brought to the boil together. We're going to add a tablespoon or a little bit of concentrated rose water there. That gives a beautiful rose flavour. Now, as far as making the little balls are concerned, I'm going to show you how to do that, so watch carefully. Here we've got some full cream milk powder, 2½ cups. And here we've got some all-purpose or self-raising flour, 1/2 cup. If you like, you can add cardamom powder to your Gulab jamuns if you want them to have a very slightly spicy flavour. You can miss out the cardamom if it's not your favourite. You also need some amount of cold milk. I've started off here with about 3/4 cup. We're not going to use anything like that much, but the idea is to have enough cold milk on hand to mix up the dough. So the idea is that we're mixing all these things together into a very soft dough, and then we're going to deep fry them in ghee. Now, it has to be clean ghee, uncooked in, and it should be very, very low temperature. In other words, when you stick your finger in the ghee, you can keep it in there for 3 seconds before taking it out. Careful when you make that experiment, by the way, in your kitchen, otherwise you can burn yourself, but I already knew that was cool enough to use. So what we're going to do now is mix all our ingredients together in a bowl here. The one thing about Gulab jamuns is that if it doesn't work, don't worry, try again, because it's not the easiest of preparations to make. Notice how I'm sifting in the flour here. This is important so there's no lumps. I already sifted the powdered milk before. Now let's mix up all our dry ingredients. I'm going to add my cardamom powder, I think. Mixing our ingredients until they're all nicely blended. Like so. Now we're going to add our cold milk. Let's start off by adding that much. The idea is we've got to make a dough which is going to be just the right consistency so you can roll it into balls. Now, I would suggest you use your hands for this because you've really got to just tell by the feel of the dough if it's right or not. A little more milk. Gather it all together into a nice lump. Fraction more milk. There we are, one lump of dough. Now at this stage, I'm going to knead it just for a little while. It doesn't really knead like a normal dough because after all it's just powdered milk. But we have to just spread it around a bit till it's a smooth mixture, like so. Now I'm going to scrape what I can of this off my hands so as not to waste any of it. And we'll be ready to continue with our next step. I'm going to scrape any excess dough I have off my hands here so as not to waste any. Now let's take a little ghee on our hands to moisten them, and let's pinch off little pieces of dough and roll them into balls about 1/2 inch in diameter. As soon as you roll a nice ball, which shouldn't have any cracks in, so it's nice and smooth, pop it into the ghee, and the first thing you'll notice is that nothing happens. This is a good sign because the ghee, as I told you, you can stick your finger in for 3 seconds and then it starts to get a little hot. So the idea is at first the Gulab jamuns will sink to the bottom. So while that one's still down there, I'm going to roll a few more. Now the idea is to roll them as quick as you can. I'd go for about this much ghee. I'd go for about perhaps 12, 15 gulab jamuns because they will swell up. There's nothing worse than having a beautiful batch of gulab jamuns in the ghee and then finding that as they swell up, there's too many to fit in the pan because they do swell up quite considerably. So there's number 4. Of course, if you have someone helping you, you can really move making gulab jamuns. This recipe makes about 2 dozen or more, but they'll go pretty quickly. Now, as you can see, already some of them have come to the surface. This is after about a couple of minutes. And if you look carefully there's little bubbles coming to the surface, and they're moving around. Now, I'm not moving them. It's almost like gulab jamuns have a mind of their own because they start rolling around. See them rolling around there? And there's another one comes to the surface. And I think there's another one just about to come to the surface there. It's actually quite amazing. If you like, you can move the ghee around a little bit just to encourage them, but at this stage, don't touch the gulab jamuns themselves. See how they're expanding? This is the reason why you should only put in a small quantity at the beginning. Otherwise, they bump into each other at this stage and start pushing each other out of the pan. Now, it's been about 15 minutes now. See how our gulab jamuns are going golden colour? And they've swelled up even more. We're getting pretty close to the time now where they have to come out of the ghee. It's very important to keep your gulab jamuns moving. That's why I'm always pushing them around and submerging them under the ghee with the aid of my slotted spoon. This is one of the secrets of a good gulab jamun. Now our gulab jamuns are done. Notice how they're that nice shade of brown all over. So I'm going to turn off the ghee and very carefully lift them out of the ghee and put them in our syrup. So what you do is you just take 3 or 4 at a time, shake out all the ghee, don't put them in a colander, but put them straight into your batch of sugar syrup. And there's our first batch of gulab jamuns, golden, juicy, sweet balls. I like to soak them in the syrup for about 24 hours before serving them. Sometimes you can even leave them for longer. They're actually good a week later even, or even 2 weeks later, but generally speaking there's none left by then. After 24 hours, they look like this. Notice how these are darker, they're a little larger, and they're much juicier. They even swell up a bit more in the syrup. And the test of a perfect gulab jamun is that when you pick it up, you can squeeze out lots and lots of juice from it, like so. And that's a nice gulab jamun. And when you put it back in the syrup, it soaks it all back up again. Oh, there's one final thing. That's how to eat your gulab jamuns. Now you might say, well, obviously I just put it in my mouth. But the point is how to put it in your mouth. Don't try to nibble it or bite a piece off because the juice will just explode all over you. Best way to eat a gulab jamun is to put it straight in your mouth so the juice explodes where it belongs. Mmm.